Ohio State. It's
Okay.
the Ohio State. So,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I had we have, USGS has a, stable isotope lab in Denver.
right,
So,
right, it's what you'll find.
yeah. Well, it's always a little difficult to get his attention, but once I did.
Um, what's our Wi-Fi?
What's our Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
I don't know. Lost it. Why, but
You're probably on there.
I've lost it. I thought I,
Uh,
Hey, Stephen, nice to meet you.
I couldn't get up.
Someone here on Zoom,
Yeah,
can you press that?
yeah.
Wait, can you press that?
Oh,
Yes, hold on. We were having audio issues out of the schoolhouse. I'm hoping they work now. Let me just make sure we have audio going out. Okay, it's working now. Great. We have a few people on Zoom and apparently the sound wasn't working. So I have to always remember to turn it on. So I just wanted to note with the maps that we have John Walls here today and the town staff has prepared a list, a map list of all the amendments that we have records of for the maps that have been officially approved by the town council or the appropriate approval body. So John was able to review those and look at them. And the important thing for today that we want to make sure that John and the staff leave with is the desired scope for the map updates. So it would be helpful if there's a dialogue back and forth with John so that he leaves today being able to prepare a scope of work and a budget for the town to consider. Because right now we have a tiny budget. I think, Nan, it's about $1,300 that was approved in the annual town operating budget for John to come to this meeting and do some preliminary research. And he also met with the town staff a few weeks ago to prep for this, but it's important to note that the work itself is not approved in the budget right now, and that we would have to make sure that John has the information that he needs to prepare the scope of work and then the budget. And then that could be considered by the town council in the future at the appropriate time.
Okay, if the scope and budget are acceptable, if it worked out now before the end of the year, well, I guess we're looking in fiscal years. Do you anticipate that the actual map work, the map amendments, new maps could come out in the next fiscal year?
Well, it's hard to know because the budget for this would come from the town's general fund. And the general fund right now, in this fiscal year, for example, has a deficit. And so the town council would have to consider this along with all the other funding requests that go forward to the town council through the budget review process, which occurs in the spring. And then, as you know, final decisions made on the budget in June.
Yeah, as we've discussed,
Oh, again, is your
my-
microphone on? It's
pardon?
just, your microphone's on? Good. Okay.
can you hear me?
Well,
No?
try the other one.
Yeah, maybe try the other one. Sorry, we're having some microphone problems.
Okay, can you hear me?
Just get really close.
Like this? Okay, all right. Yeah, as we've discussed, my concern is that there is likely to be a lot more building here in places that have never been built on before, because all the good spots have been taken. And I want to be sure that anyone who is looking at purchasing a lot in Portola Valley for development or whatever purpose understands what the underlying geologic situation is, whether the old map has, as a spot taken off that was thought to be undesirable for building, or whether there's a new spot put on that is undesirable for buildings, not on the old map. Future purchasers should know, and it's not, I'm not just talking about the next RENA cycle, I'm talking about years into the future. So now is the time to lay the foundation for a really, the best geologic map we can get and ground movement potential.
Yeah, so you raise a really good interest, and it might be helpful for when you want John Wallace to come up and speak, if he can just describe the process that he currently follows when he gets, for example, a development proposal referred to him by the town planning staff. Because as you know, there are state laws, local laws, and the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, that govern development in California, and those apply layers of review requirements on planning applications or building permits that the town refers to John to apply as appropriate. So I don't know if you want to jump into the discussion, but it could be helpful for John to describe the process he uses to give you some sense of whether I don't think he relies entirely on the current maps. I think he has, again, all the amendments in his files, and then he may also utilize, to be honest, his institutional knowledge of the town, which is quite deep.
Right, no, I'm not questioning John's John's decisions and on the, specific parcels that come before the ASCC or the Planning Commission. I'm just saying that at the end of, I hope the end of this year, we'll have, I would hope to have updated maps, and that would be the best for everyone. So everyone understands what's buildable, what's not. And it would be very clear. Otherwise, what would be Plan B if we cannot find the budget to put out new maps within the next year or so? What is Plan B? To be able to communicate to anyone who is looking on real estate sites for a lot in Portola Valley, communicate what the situation really is for buildability.
Well, we have all the amendments and they're public documents, so they are available. We can look at the ease, making those more easily accessible, such as posting them online, but it would probably be best if John speaks to that, just because he's familiar with the work product and the volume of them. But I just want to emphasize that when a buyer or developer buys a piece of property or proposes a project and they hire their licensed architect and their licensed civil engineer, licensed geotechnical engineer, it is their responsibility under California law and our local codes to, ensure the accuracy of their work product on private property.
I understand, but that's after the purchase has been made. I'm talking about prospective buyers who may be discouraged from buying because there's a large area of soil marked unstable, and then that really has been investigated and found not to be, and should not be marked unstable. Or conversely, someone buys a parcel that's apparently just fine, and then later finds there's something really wrong that we actually knew about.
Well, again, if it's in a public record, the prospective buyer or their licensed real estate broker agent should perform a records review. There's reality, and then there's the public records, but we offer all of our public information to the public if they want it, as you know, through a public records request. If they miss something, that is entirely on them. That's their broker's responsibility. If there is something that isn't disclosed, and frankly, in a lot of real estate transactions, there's issues with disclosures, and that's a public civil issue. A private civil issue. The town doesn't get involved. But maybe we should get back at the 30,000 foot level and have maybe the committee describe their interest in this project, the map update project, their interest in what you know, and then John Wallace can also provide his input to, again, try to leave here with a scope of work.
Okay, well, I've stated my interest is having the best, most recent information reflected in the maps, so that it's clear in one place, not with a record search through, frankly, the applications for ASCC or Planning Commission that involve trenching or boreholes, involve geotechnical investigations are pretty solid reading. I enjoy them, but probably not everyone does. But I think the maps are the way to convey our most recent and best understanding of what the situation is here. Okay? And I would like to see this laundry list of parcels that have changes that John has and presumably the town has selected. Do you know how many there are?
Let's have John Wallace maybe approach and he can explain what he's reviewed, because we gave it to him, I think, just last week.
Hi. Again, I'm John Wallace. I just met you, some of you. Nan, to address kind of the first item you were talking about, in a pre-purchase arena, the most important thing is making the maps available, which the town does. The maps are on our website. Most of the consultants that work in the area know to call us. And if they get hired for a pre-purchase investigation, which is very common in the town, we'll get a call from the consultant, say, hey, I've got a client that's looking at X property, and what do you know about it? What are the constraints? And that's a service that we provide to the town at no cost. It happens all the time. And we obviously steer them to our website to make sure they're familiar with the maps. But most of the consultants that work in the town, they're repeat consultants. The architects know who the consultants are that do pretty much the best work in the peninsula. And so it's a very small group typically that we see in town, and they know the drill. But it happens very frequently that we get calls in a pre-purchase portion of a job. Once it comes through with an application, then it kicks in our protocol that we do the background research of all of our files that are anywhere close to that property. And we've got files that go back to the 70s when we first started work in the town. So we have an extensive knowledge of the town. So all of that gets folded into kind of the site visit research that we do. Once the application comes through and we've done our background research, we go out to the site in every instance, because you never know what could have changed on that property in a severe winter. Whatever we saw, maybe we saw a new residence 10 years ago on that property, and they come in with an ADU. We always go back out, even if it's a site development permit. We'll come in, we'll look at the site. A year later, it might come in for a building permit. We'll go back out. If there's been a full winter, we never assume that the site conditions remain the same. And as far as the amount of ground movement potential map applications changes that we've gotten, we need to cross-ref. I looked at the list that I was given. I've got at least a half a dozen others in my files. And there's some, and this is a discussion that I wanted to have with the committee. There are some map changes that don't come in necessarily for a full map modification application. It could be a site development permit that we see something on the site. And as the town geologist, there's one on Grove Drive that was particularly troublesome. The original mapping was horrible. You know, when the maps were put together, and I don't know if you folks all know how that was done and when that was done, but it was done back in the 60s and 70s, primarily with aerial photograph interpretation. Very few of the individual sites were actually walked. So it's a very good resource, but you know, when you get down to the property specific level, the maps, you know, are oftentimes, you know, off. The line work isn't quite right. So there's probably at least a half a dozen that I have in my files that weren't in yours. So we do need to cross-reference and make sure all that's okay. But one of the issues that I'd like to kind of discuss with the committee is, and Grove Drive is an excellent example, where the line work was shifted somehow, and a PD zone is literally on the town road for hundreds and hundreds of feet. And when we did an application, I can't remember the address now, but it was immediately apparent that the map and the line work was way off. So, and it extends further than just the application. And so that's something where I've got a map that I have marked up and suggested, modified line work, even though it's near properties that weren't in the application process. So in those instances, and I know Resolution 500, or at least what we know is Resolution 500, the original guidelines for the maps. I think it's 2746 now, but it says the town geologist can submit line work even though it wasn't part of an official application. So that's going to happen in several instances in my files where I've got information that's valid for a map change without, that's why your files don't have them. So I don't know if I answered the question, but if there's any questions while I'm up here, fire.
It's clear you do a lot of careful work in the parcel area. The area being considered for a transaction, but do you factor in, I'm sure you do actually, regional, you haven't mentioned the regional grain of the country and how it may impinge on the local parcel. Sometimes you can't see it in the local parcel if you stand back, well,
Well, certainly, and it's a sticky issue, and we've run into it for years. And me personally, I've been working in the town since 1990. So our company has 50 years of knowledge. I've got whatever, 30 plus. And in that amount of time, we've chased some of these front range faults that are shown on the map. A consultant will trench them, they don't find it. And then we have to figure out, okay, on this individual parcel, the fault either wasn't where it was shown or it's shifted. And how does that impact the properties next to it? And so it gets very difficult to do the line work because you might change a line work and it could go through someone else's house where it never did. And so regionally, you can get in trouble that way. So we have to be very careful.
where it was never noted, but you're not changing the facts on the ground. You're just getting a better interpretation of the region. And that, I think we really all have to have that in our mind, because some units won't show evidence of, say, a major strike slip fault where those up and down the line do. It's pretty clear that it's just obscured. And I know you do that. I just wondered if that does enter in a region, in a local transaction normally.
Well, certainly. And we've got all the historical aerial photos in town that we look at. And we've got an entire LiDAR database for the town. And that's something that I know, Darcy, that I don't know if we've given that to you folks, but we do have an entire LiDAR database for the town. And we make that available to consultants, because many of the consultants, the small ones, they don't necessarily have the resources to do that. And so we'll send them the LiDAR. We want them to see the same things we're seeing, so we don't get into disputes over, well, we've got the LiDAR and you don't. Well, they need to have it. So that's an additional resource that we have and we look at.
That's very interesting. Thank you. I talked to some colleagues at the Geological Survey when, I realized that we were talking about possibly changing or rethinking some of the fault locations, and they emphasize this quaternary fault and fold database that's co-maintained by, I guess, CDMG
Yeah.
and USGS.
Yep.
And do you interact with that database? Do you try to, do you regard it as an important way of kind of documenting?
Yes, and well, and any AP zone, and we really haven't had any of those in quite a while. The Sequoias, I think, is embarking on some trenching for that. But we really haven't had a whole lot of AP zone work recently, but certainly those get dumped into the database. They come to us and search our files so that whatever they produce is up to date as possible. Yeah. And that's something as part of the update that we'll be looking at too, to make sure that whatever is shown on our town map, at least we know we have more detailed investigations that we're privy to. And so we generally refer to our maps as more accurate than what the regional mapping and the state puts together, but we generally try and coordinate. Yeah.
Yeah, John, okay, so between John and Darcy.
And
Pardon? What was the question, Pat?
So
Oh,
do you-
sorry.
do you have someone at the USGS that is like a liaison when you find information you think should get incorporated into the Quaternary Golden Fault
Not necessarily at the USGS, but with the state.
with the state?
Yeah.
So Tim Dawson, is that?
Yeah, well, I know Tim is very active and we've coordinated with him on, in the past for sure.
So, yeah, so if you find something significant enough to get incorporated into the larger database, you have a way of,
Yeah,
a person to communicate
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
Sorry, Dan, but Pat's question reminds me, we had a great presentation from the gentleman who's in charge of the seismic hazard group at PG&E a few months ago. I'm forgetting his name right now, but it was pretty interesting how much active work they seem to be doing and sort of sponsoring. Are you in touch with PG&E as well? Is that relevant?
Oh, we work with PG&E very closely.
Mm.
Yeah. We've worked with Bill Page. He's their lead geologist for 30 plus years. And we do a lot of work for them as well. So, and I've been personally hired to investigate faults on PG&E's behalf. So we work very close with PG&E.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so between Darcy's list and John's list, roughly how many amendments to parcels do you think we have? Just roughly.
The-
I did not quantify them, but what I'm hearing is it's a robust amount of work. The amendments is just one piece of it. Then we have John Wallace's institutional memory and things in his files. And then we have other non-amendments that went through the town for a site development permit or a building permit that didn't go through the amendment process. So 3 different things. To some extent, it might be hard to scope. And what I've done with projects like that is obviously we're paying John time and material, right? We pay him hourly and then any materials associated with it or other items. It's hard to know how much work exactly this will be, but often in that case, we ask the consultant for, an estimate, and then we have a ample contingency that can be tapped if additional work is needed.
Yeah, I think the numbers in the probably 15 to 20 range of
Okay, thank you.
modifications, somewhere in that.
Okay, last time I think it was about 12.
Yeah, that
Okay.
somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and we also have a couple of questions for you, and that is, would you want to talk about Black Mountain?
Do I have a, go ahead.
No, we've been looking at 2 faults, Black Mountain, which John Branner first mapped back in before 1906, 1895 or so, and mapped through field in back of us. And the Verical, which, you know, the USGS has stopping it in the Priory Field. Pardon? Can't hear? Sorry. All right. So we're looking at Black Mountain Fault, Branner's Fault, and the Verical Fault, which mysteriously ends at the Priory Field, and it turns out that that's the top of the quad, and they were only required to map to the top of the quad. So does that continue? Both of which have apparently shown movement historically in 1906. We think that both of them moved in 1906. So the question is what to do about them, and we would like to have you investigate with us. We can show you what we've got
Sure.
for them, and we'd like to talk about how they should be handled on our maps.
Are you referring to the 1906 reference to the Portola Road cracking right by the fire station in that area? Is that the one one of the?
That's one of them, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was marked as with a triangle and a circle on a map, but
Yeah,
on our map,
right.
it's more than just that. I mean, Browner was pretty careful mapping, and he showed it on the other side of Alpine Road, going through Portola Road
A
to
ranch.
basically Priory.
Heading south, yeah. Yeah, I've seen that. No, that's certainly something we wanted to, and we've seen that trace. And we marked it on the map with an insignia. The reference, I think, was like 1,000 feet of road cracking along Portola Road. And so we put a mark there so that with anything that comes in for a permit, we know it's there. We didn't have enough information going south, like through Portola Ranch in that area. But I think it's worth investigating or revisiting some of the work that was done in the ranch to see if they had any evidence of it going through there, like shown on the state maps.
Okay, so I have a question for the assembled group. I just had an idea the other day. What if we could run seismic lines across where we think the fault might be? If we could run them inexpensively, as in, Simon, get a university to help us, so get the equipment together, maybe get students to help place the geophones and learn something about seismic refraction.
Certainly.
So if we could organize something like that, I would love to get some actual data. Well, is fault there? Is it not there? See what we have.
Right.
Okay.
Part and parcel to that is, as reviewers, we never rely, and consultants come to us all the time wanting to do geophysical lines across faults. And we're all for it, but we also want them to combine surface investigations to help sleuth out, where that trace may actually be. And we can't approve a subdivision or any development on geophysical data alone. It's not sufficient to only use that for purposes of locating a fault. So
You want to see the evidence.
certainly, yeah. But if you're buried by alluvium, obviously having something that you can't trench because it's too deep, seismic data is great information. It's probably the only information you're going to get. So it's certainly valuable. Yeah.
Okay, and then the other fault was Brenner's Black Mountain Fault. And how do you want to do that? Do you want to, I can put this up on the screen. You want to go through it? Okay, so I can put up on the screen just this from a PDF. It's not not PowerPoint. Some maps and points that suggest that Branner's Fault really is, really does cut through here. So if you can give me a minute. uh, Meantime, does anyone have any other thoughts? And,
I
yeah, Bob.
I have a question for you, John, and
Sure.
for Darcy, which is, there are references to reports, geotechnical reports in the past, and I don't know how to get a hold of some of them. There's some that I would like to be able to get a hold of. Do we go through the town? Do we go through Cotton Shires? If we go through Cotton Shires, is that putting a burden on the town in terms of cost? What's the process?
There would probably be some cost involved, so it'd probably be good to scope that with this work. Those are all public records, but as it's been wisely pointed out, just because it's a public record doesn't mean it's easily accessible,
Right.
but they are available if people inquire. And it sounds like from what John Wall said is that in this area, we are very fortunate to have consultants on the private sector side that are very familiar with the town. Sounds like they have repetitive business in the town. So they probably either know how to make a phone call to ask a question to try to find it or go through John. So that is one good thing. But if you wanted to access them, you would inquire with probably Robert Burt and Steve McHarris, who's the interim planning and building director who you've met with. And we can coordinate that. And I just want to emphasize that for any of the members of the public viewing, and we should accept public comments, Nan, because there's some people online, that is always available to them if anyone has any inquiry. As I always say, there's really no secrets in government. You might be led to believe otherwise, but everything we have at town hall is largely a public document that the public could come in and see at any time. Just a matter of finding it. So if you can give us a courtesy, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and along those same lines, all of our files are electronic, going all the way back. We've scanned everything we have.
Oh,
So we have, scanned documents from the 70s, and we can pull those up in a heartbeat. So it's not that we have not everything, we think we have everything that we've ever done, but, and I know in the past scanning old documents, we've got most of it. So it shouldn't take all that long
thank you.
or the cost shouldn't be enormous for us to go digging through files. It's just punching a few buttons and see if we've got it.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
So a question, so when an existing property owner in Portola Valley proposes a new building and have a geoengineering report created, do you get a copy of that, or does it stay private with them, or does the town get a copy of that?
So any document that gets submitted to the town for a permit, if it gets sent to us and we maintain, especially now, a digital copy, most everything we get is all digital. Everything in the past wasn't, but we've scanned all that. It was a huge process to do that.
Yeah.
But we do have scanned copies of old reports too.
So for example, when Alpine Swim and Tennis Club did their remodel and they wanted to build a new building that was near a mapped fault and trenched it, so that information would be either with the town or with you?
Yep, we've got it.
Okay.
I've got it up here. I saw that trench. It was a great exposure.
Yeah, yeah.
But we
Yeah, I
also
saw it
have-
too. Yeah, I took some photos.
Yeah, we also have the digital file.
But I never saw how they wrote it up.
Okay. This is what we have on the Black Mountain Fault. Can you see on the screen? It's a little small. Isn't it? Sorry, let's see if I can make it larger.
Nan, if you can just cite the source of this,
If I can what?
cite the source.
The source?
For the map?
For the map, yeah,
Oh,
for the
this-
public watching.
For this
Oh.
map, it's the USGS Quaternary Fault and Fold Database. Okay,
Oh, I made the actual illustration. but we got the data
Annotated,
from
yeah.
the
yeah. And the Black Mountain Fault is Bob's placement from Branner's original mapping in 1895, I think. Okay. So that's the Black Mountain, the regional, that's a regional picture. The Black Mountain coincides with the Barracal when you're going past Foothills Park. They're the same. They're mapped as the same. Otherwise, they diverge a bit when they're going south, but then they end up at the same place north of the limestone quarry in Cupertino. And they diverge to the north of Foothills Park as they come into Portola Valley. The Barracal possibly crosses Alpine and Portola right there. And the Black Mountain crosses Alpine Road just a little farther south. Let's see. No. Oops, sorry. So this is, if I can get it back. Ready?
This one.
Yeah, and I wanted to shoot it if I can. Yeah. Sorry. This is awkward. I have to stay in Word. Right there. Okay, so we have 3 places that show evidence or possible evidence of the Black Mountain Fault. One is on number 1 is on Page Mill Road, and that's from the Lawson Report in 1908. The second is at Corte Madera Creek, and that's the most important probably here, where there's a right lateral bend. And third is in the Neely Winery Field, where Brenner shows it as intersecting his San Andreas Fault anyway, shown as okay. John, you okay with that so far? Okay. All right. Okay, so at Pageville Road, the Stanford geologist who was tasked with walking up Pageville Road and recording any signs of faulting, first found ground cracks across the road about a mile above above the Clarito Winery, which I've located from a 1953 air photo. There's still vines in 53. And that's right across Page Mill Road from the entrance to Foothills Park.
Okay.
About a mile south of there, up the hill. That's where they first encountered cracks. And that is, in fact, where Branner had earlier, 1895, mapped his Black Mountain Fault as crossing Page Mill Road. That's, okay, one point. The second place is, oh, here's the, you need it, here's the 1953 air photo from Google Earth. Okay. Second place is at Corte Madera Creek, and I'd like Bob to talk about this one.
Okay, so the interest on the Black Mountain Fault really started because it's interesting that the fault is shown in the Lawson Report and nowhere else really. And it's nobody explained it in writing as to why they did. People who mapped here did that, but it was clear that the original mapping of the area involved a model of the San Andreas Fault doing left stepping in the town. And that model is pretty much inconsistent with having the existence of the Black Mountain Fault. But now we've shown that there was no left stepping in the town, that everything was on essentially what I call the western trace of the San Andreas Fault, and that the eastern trace, there's no evidence that that moved in 1906. So there is no justification in terms of a complication with left stepping to not have the Black Mountain Fault exist. And so then it's like, well, why doesn't it? Because it's in the Lawson report and they were people that lived here. We used LiDAR, I used bare earth LiDAR to find evidence of something, and there on the screen are two examples of right lateral offset of the Black Mountain Fault. One is on Corte Madera Creek itself, and the other is little ways away to the southeast, which is the ridge that includes, just for lack of reference, Corte Madera Road. And at the base of the ridge, you can see something that looks like right lateral offset that's about the same as the right lateral offset on Corte Madera Creek. And that seems to be coincident with how it was mapped in the Lawson report.
Okay. Um, And the third point we'd like to discuss is in the field, Neely Winery field over there. And it's a sort of hard to see the sequoias, this LiDAR again. Saucel Creek is the black fracture running diagonally. So you're looking northeast, pretty much northeast to Portola Road up at the top. Sequoias is up at the top right. And along Saucel Creek, you have both a ridge and a depression right next to the ridge. And did I take out the? Oh, I took out the other picture. I'll have to find it. I don't have it. Anyway, Bob, can you describe, because I forgot to put in the other picture with the faults. Can you describe how the faults run in the picture?
Well, in this picture, we're looking, I guess, easterly or northeasterly towards Portola Road across the field that's north of the Sequoias. And there's a feature that is interpreted here as being essentially a linear ridge or pressure ridge and a sag pond area. It's not a real pond because the ground isn't flat. And if it was flat, then we would have a pond. And it's interesting that that area is coincident with where the Black Mountain Fault is shown as in the Lawson report as branching from the San Andreas Fault. And it wouldn't surprise me if the existence of this ridge and sag area are related to where the faults merge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, can you speak into the microphone so we can catch you on the, oh,
Yeah, I think it was mid-90s, late 90s, it was called the Baypex exploration, where I think PG&E was the primary sponsor of it. And we were involved in various areas, but that sag was trenched and it was a spectacular fault exposure. We also trenched essentially parallel to the Neely driveway
Right.
at the south end of the field. And that was a continuous trench all the way across. And it picked up, the pressure ridge, which is basically the Woodside trace. That was it's thought to be the active trace in '06. And then it was picked up, the Trancos trace out by Portola Road. That was found dramatically, and there was nothing in between. But where you're talking about the Black Mountain extending off, it could be coincident with where the Trancos broke, or where we found the Trancos out near the road. And then the Trancos obviously goes through Corte Madera Creek at that big turn that you showed. So there's nothing to suggest that it couldn't splinter off, southeastward from there. Although getting it to go across the Corte Madera Ridge and basically condemn a whole bunch of homes through there would be an interesting study if that was found to be there. There's, at least the LiDAR imagery I've seen doesn't show, up on top the ridge, any evidence for faulting. But like you say, if there is a little offset in that toe region on the north side where you see the ridge offset, that could be real. But certainly it's worth looking at, definitely.
So you mentioned this report, it actually sort of shows up in the LiDAR, that big trench that goes all the way across when they filled it in, it didn't, there's a little bit of a depression.
Yeah.
That's a report that I would love to have access to.
Sure.
I've never been able to find anybody that has one.
Yeah, I'll dig back through. I don't know if I have the report. There were trenches done from the north part of the state, chasing the San Andreas. It was an effort to learn more about the 06 trace. And so Cotton Shires, we trenched down near Saratoga, going a site through there. There were trenches here. There were some up in the North Bay. So it was a whole concerted effort with a bunch of different consultants being hired to take on one locality and really study it and find out more about it. So I'll look into where those data are and keep you posted.
So that's interesting. You found, I don't know, splinter fault, you found evidence of faulting in this area.
Oh, for sure. This, in aerials jumps out like a sore thumb, running through the Neely field there. And that the features you show are real. That sag, we knew that was ripe for trenching and getting more information on timing of ruptures and recurrence intervals and that kind of thing. And so we weren't the company that was responsible for this area. We were further south. But we looked at all these trenches with the consultants that were doing the work right here.
And this one was Holocene active? This
Here?
particular one, yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Woodside trace of the San Andreas.
Oh, it is the Woodside
Yeah.
trace. Okay, and whether the black, that leaves open the question of what or where the Black Mountain.
Yeah,
is.
I don't think Bob is suggesting this, but the geomorphic features expressed in that image are the Woodside trace.
Okay.
So if the Black Mountain trends southeastward from there, it's certainly not evident as such that you see in the topography there. That's Woodside trace geomorphology.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it still leaves open the question of whether the Black Mountain exists as a separate fault, and if so, exactly where is it? And if it exists, then it should be on the map, except that it also would go through houses.
Oh, and that's probably the tightest subdivision in Portola Valley.
Yeah.
The houses and there's a lot of them through there. So yeah, it would be a major issue if that was an active fault going through there, certainly. But if it is, obviously it should be sleuthed out. I haven't seen evidence for it, but if, you know, if it's something that the town thinks we should look into, then yeah, let's do it.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your open mind.
Sure.
Hi, don't forget to accept public comments because we have a lot of the public online, but I'll just say the town, as you know, does not have an in-house geologist. And while I took classes from Gary and Simon, I'm not qualified to make a decision about what the town staff as a body believes is appropriate to include or not include. This has been a great, honestly, like a scientific discussion. It's been great, but I see a process unfolding whereby as part of the scope of work that John Wallace prepares, he includes time to come back to this committee and present his research. And then again, have a deliberative discussion, again, with public comments weighed in, because these could affect private property owners. So there is due process with these map amendments. And then ultimately, as you know, the town council is presented with the maps to include or not include. The map updates may rise to the level of needing what's called a study session with the town council. That's where they review policy topics. Staff and the town geologist was present like a series of questions, like, here's this information. How do you feel about this policy issue? And it sounds like I'm seeing a threshold of significance almost as to when a fault is included in a map and when it isn't, or maybe it's advisory. I don't know the technical term, but that policy decision, since you're an advisory body of the town council, would ultimately be before the town council. And rather than wait until the very end when the map is presented before them for adoption, what is the best practice in municipal policy development is a study session whereby, again, these topics that are somewhat policy in nature and somewhat, I don't know, want to say like ripe for scientific debate, but maybe differing views on both sides are presented to the decision makers. So that could be included in the scope. And as I talk, I just see the scope being having maybe the minimum items to update the map and then a series of scope add-ons. And so then the work could be accounted for in the future on an as-needed basis. Any questions about that?
No. Yeah, just one comment, and you were talking about whether basically how to present a fault. That's another issue. Whether it's known to be active and dangerous, or whether it's possibly dangerous, we're not sure. We're not sure exactly where it runs, because you've got, John says, meters of alluvium covering it, but you think it's there. So all those are questions that would need to be resolved in the study session. Okay.
So to understand, so it sounds like you're interested in, here's the geomorphic evidence and 1906 evidence of possible secondary traces that might have moved. And from us, you might want a list of, these are the areas that merit investigation or additional attention. Is that right, Darcy?
Correct. This is where the committee could be very helpful. So if you can start working on that information, and also, Nan, sort of, I don't want to say the policy questions, but these questions that come up, should this be included? Should that be included? What's the process? It would probably greatly inform John Wallace's work.
Yeah, and the way I see it is, here's what we know, here are the map changes that we know we need to make. Let's make them. If there are other broader issues that the town or the Geologic Safety Committee is interested in looking at or raising as study issues, then propose those as, like Darcy said, add-on items.
Okay, so we could take this in two parts. One is changes we know about, and the other is changes that we will study.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm seeing a scope that's broken into those categories and then possibly then, items to further examine through the process. And that would be policy questions that then could direct, once answered, could direct Cotton Shires specifically in their approach.
Okay. So if John is scoping out the project and trying to figure out how many hours this is going to take, that's a little,
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing that right now for, say, studying the Black Mountain Fault. I'll definitely be able to give a set cost and time allotment for the map changes. And we talked about it last month when I met with Robert and Darcy and Emily about working. So in the past, the maps were not digital. And so it was a significant effort. And that's why, and there's some wording in Resolution 500 that talks about whenever there's a map modification, it gets added to the map immediately. But that's not so easy to do. It is now that everything's digital. And that's something I think we should talk about as well is, the last modification to the update to the maps was 8 or 9 years ago. So we've kind of stockpiled a bunch of them. And so there are changes out there. And I know the committees, this is obviously a concern. We know there are changes. They're not shown on the map right now. Let's get them on the map. Let's change the map. In the future, now that we've got everything digitally, with a couple strokes of a mouse, we can update it. And those maps are reflective of the current thinking and investigations. So we should discuss that as well, rather than waiting 8 or 9 years for every update. Is there a way we can do it and make it in real time and keep that, or does every change have to go to the council? And if so, maybe that has to happen to keep the map current.
Just for information, what I've done in the past when I've administered, for example, the zoning code or the general plan map, if the appropriate town body takes official action to adopt the amendment, the town or city updates the map in GIS automatically, as John said, and then it's republished online. We keep a log at the bottom of the map that cites the resolution number or the action, but that way the map is updated. Sometimes that's done by towns or cities quarterly, but if there's a low volume, it's done as soon as possible. And then again, the map is republished with the date and the resolution. Obviously, we keep the old maps as a record, but that's the best practice. Right now, we don't necessarily have the staff to do that, but that would be appropriate, for example, to include in the sort of ongoing contract with Cotton Shires as an annual responsibility. So it's something to consider for the future too.
what would the procedure be? The changes recommended is passed by passed by the planning commission or ASCC. You go through them first, and then it would be automatically accepted by the town council, and maps would be updated every quarter or so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a way more effective way to do it. For sure.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, because just from a legal perspective, when an official amendment is approved, the map is technically amended. The council doesn't need to take separate action to readopt the entire map. The map is amended. And so, for example, in other town maps that are amended frequently, like the zoning map and the general plan the general plan land use map. Yeah. In this day and age, as John said, when everything's super digital, the maps can be made in, I'll be honest, minutes. And then it's a few minutes, less than 5, to upload them to our website. So literally a map amendment could take 10 minutes, because in part, the map amendment is made using GIS, right? So there's an exhibit that's presented to the decision makers. That's done in GIS. So it's already, the line work has already been done. And so essentially it's just a matter of accepting those final edits and making a PDF of the map and posting the map online.
Yeah, and in the past, it was our graphics person laboring with line work, and it was very laborious and it was very expensive. What we're talking about is not going to be nearly as expensive as it was 10 years ago for us to do it. So,
That's good news.
yeah.
I have one more question. It's something that's been bothering me for years. When I look at the Portola Valley maps and then I look at the Woodside maps, it's like the overlay or underlay of the satellite image on the Woodside map, I find very, in some sense useful, but in another very distracting. So would you do the same thing for Woodside you're doing for Portola Valley?
Or,
So the maps would be visually consistent.
oh, so that there's harmony across the town boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we did the Woodside maps. I can't remember the year that we did so I can't say they blend perfectly. They should, but we can certainly look at that. That's part of what we're doing. But yeah, Cotton Shires did the Woodside map too.
Okay, good, thank you.
So Nan, what is the issue? What's
Issue?
the mismatch?
Well, I guess for us, we'll need to work on, if we were interested in pursuing Barrocal and Black Mountain, we need to figure out how to get more probably either seismic or trenching data for them. And have a study session. John, we need information from John, anything you have. Because I think we
So you're
probably don't have all the information you have.
Listing maps, there's a fault traces?
Oh, you're talking about the maps. I'm sorry. The Woodside and Portola Valley map. No, it's just visual presentation. It's there's a layer in the Woodside map, the published Woodside map, that is a satellite photo. It shows all the trees and houses, everything. It is, which I find very distracting on one hand, but on the other hand, you can see streets as well as geologic features.
So the base is it?
The base is different. Yeah, it's visually very different. I think that, if you run a fault through Portola Valley into Woodside, they're pretty much going to match, but it's just a visual issue.
Could I raise a somewhat ancillary question? It seems to me the Geologic Safety Committee is concerned about how the people of Portola Valley can survive a major event or geologic event, let us call it an earthquake, and how many changes have to be made on the map until we're ready to say that people can either shelter in place or move out along corridors, please. But that will never be done. The map will never stop changing. There will be always some new things coming. So we have to arise we have to decide when it's sufficient for what the residents are going to need to survive the next seismic event or some other event like landslides and stuff like that. But it seems to me it's not going to be perfect because it will never be perfect. The map, I mean.
Right. Well, it's a planning document. It's not a emergency.
So we need to get something out for all the residents. And I would say we're close to being prepared to do that because we have a lot of agreement as to how the land lies.
Mhm.
And the question is, are there any eviscerating details about where the faults are trending that would impede, well, everything's going to impede egress or ingress. And the trick is how we're going to solve that problem. We need to get something out to the residents that is based on a geologic map.
Right. And Darcy, I don't know, it sounds like he's talking about it like an emergency action plan based upon geologic hazards, which doesn't exist. The town map is basically a document for planning purposes. So, and certainly if that's something that the town is interested, put it on the list of items to address. Because it's certainly obviously a big issue, if you live at the Sequoias,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do when you have 20-foot offset and nobody can get in or out, or, that type of thing is certainly a question that is what I think you're referring to.
So from the town's perspective, I'll just say, to be honest, even today, when we might get an inch of rain, you should definitely be prepared to lose power and be at home for some period of time. We've seen in the past few years, as you know, large storms that come in and down trees and create major hazards to vehicle travel out in and out of the town. So, and as you know, in this part of the town, we only have basically 2 exit points. So the chances of a tree coming down and taking out a power line, which can take days to fix, right? Days. We're not a town that PG&E responds to quickly. So faults would be a big issue, right? If we have a ground opening on Portola or Alpine Road. But I would just remind everyone that we live in an environment and have natural environmental factors such as the weather that can result in everyday hazards. But when the town staff met recently with Nan and Bob, they showed us an amazing map that they've created. And so maybe they can speak to that. And we are working on getting that up on our website. But what I see in the future is that the Geologic Safety Committee will also partner with our amazing Wildfire Preparedness Committee and our Emergency Preparedness Committee. And I guess, for lack of a better term, create a task force, but around evacuation planning, because this committee looks at it largely with respect to geologic hazards. But as I mentioned, relative to just tree hazards and storms, there's a lot of similarities. So do you want to speak to your map, which is, if it's not online yet, I know we're working on getting it online.
It is apparently somewhere on the website, but I don't know where. Someone put it on years ago. Oh, I know where it is. Can you find the evacuation plan? It's Appendix G or H. So John, we did put together a map of what we call potential geologic hazards that could impede evacuation for fire after an earthquake. It's a very special but horrible situation.
Yeah.
And we did include Baracal and Black Mountain because it's possible that they will, there could be road disruptions at those locations.
So the map that was created was not intended to replace the town's geologic map and the ground movement potential maps. Those will always be the official maps for planning purposes. But this was a map that had a different purpose, which was to deal with an emergency and evacuations and to try to give people a clue as to where something might happen if there is a big event in the town.
And then the next,
I'm sorry, was that specific to fault hazards?
Mostly, yeah.
Because in order to put together what Gary's talking about is, something that if we were to get involved looking at all geologic hazards, Well, for example, 1998, Alpine Road was inundated and completely cut off.
Yeah.
You could barely even walk up it. And so, trying to predict where and when is a very difficult task, but so to your point, it was just faulting was your,
We put a special symbol on them. So this map is essentially been done for a while. It's just been not put on the town website, but we did put a special symbol just for that very place because of what happened.
yeah.
We can't yet. Did you find the map?
I'm still looking for the map, but
Okay.
I'll just say that
It's
our
in-
intent is to load it on the Geologic Safety Committee webpage, so that way everyone knows where to find it.
Okay.
So now take public comment, see if there's any hand raised or
Are there any public comments? Okay. Yep. Microphone, please.
No groaning at the podium. I have several questions. This is Mary Hufty. I'm just speaking I'm the liaison, but I am speaking as the public. I guess my first question was for John, whether there was a problem or a perceived disconnect between the records at Cotton Shires and at the town? Or is that a transparent, is there a transparency there? Are there things at Cotton Shires that the town shouldn't know about? For example, how is that? How does that work? How does that relationship work? And is it clear? That's one question you don't have to answer. You can collect the questions if you wish, because you might have a few. Nan, you can collect the questions and then decide how you want them answered, okay? And then the other is for Darcy, which is when does the planning commission come into the policy level discussion on these faults or on these maps? That was one thing I had. And then I had some, I suppose one of my questions was whether the Black Mountain Fault was one of these big deal planning things where it goes through a lot of houses. That's another question.
Answer is yes.
Yes, okay. Then I don't have to ask that question. And I wanted to say, did I understand that the geologist consultant is allowed to change lines on the map without it going through the town by resolution 500? I might be just confused about that. I'm sure it's plenty bureaucratic already, so I'm not trying to make a burden here, okay? And last, I wanted just to say how lucky we are to have you, John, for all these years and having built up this vast amount and how much we value your information and your help and your patience with a town that's deeply invested in its geology. So it's just nice to see you here at this meeting.
Wow. John, I think you have two questions.
Sure.
Do you want to take the last one first, whether you have
Yeah, in
authority to
resolution,
change lines without going through the whole?
what the resolution says is the town geologist has at his authority to change the map. It still has to be approved. It just doesn't have to be a review of an application. For example, if I see something in town that is obviously not accurate on the town map, I don't have to have an investigation by an outside consultant to document that. So, but it still has to be approved by the town and go the normal channels.
So then the question is, okay, so if you see something that you think needs to be changed, Is that typically in conjunction with an application put, before the planning commission or ASCC?
Yeah, well, and I use the Grove Drive example because there's a big arcuate zone of PD that was mapped. And I don't agree with how they mapped it. In one area, I can see a potential for a PD zone over on the southeast side, but whoever did the mapping, they wrapped a PD zone all the way around the Grove Ridge essentially. And it ends up following the town road. It's perfectly flat. There's absolutely no reason for a PD. So in that instance, when the applicant came in, we made them do a map modification for their property. But this strip of PD extends for, hundreds of feet. So that's an example of where the town geologist, I think, has the ability to recognize that, I'm on the ground looking at a feature that was mapped from aerial photographs 50 years ago, and I can say without any doubt that that's not a PD zone. And so I think in conjunction with the application, I would like the authority to be able to change that section of mapping that didn't necessarily relate to the application. So
Yeah.
that was the question that was,
What's a PD zone?
potential. Oh, sorry. I just assumed everyone knew what so the PD zone is a potentially deep landslide zone. And it's very obvious that this certain area has absolutely zero chance of sliding ever. And so that's the kind of thing where, as the town geologist, my boots are on the ground, I'm looking at it, as opposed to the mapping that was done 50 years ago from aerial photos. And the line work, I think, was shifted because on the back side, on that south side, southeast side, there is an area that's very steep, and I think they meant for that PD to be there, but it was shifted over onto, what was it, 3 Grove Drive, I think, or 350, that came in a couple years ago. And so they had to change it. So again, the point is, yes, I think the town geologist has the ability to change the map without an application, but still has to go through the same channels.
Yeah. Yep, I remember reading that report, reading the application and then your comments. And so that one stuck with me. I thought, well, interesting. So it's not deep and steep right there. Is that right?
There's no slope
There's no-
for probably 300 feet, 400 feet. The PD is on the road. It's on Grove Drive. It's perfectly flat. It goes across flat terrain. I have no idea how it got the way it did. And as the town geologist, we don't scrutinize the map, in our spare time to find little areas, but when we do go out to a site and we see something, we'll say something, that kind of a thing. So there are these little things on the map that are hanging out there. We never know when we're going to stumble across them, but that was a good example of one.
Well, the maps are works in progress always, I think.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the idea is to make them as accurate as possible with the knowledge you have at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And to answer I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, Mary. To answer your first question, the coordination between, I think the only discrepancy is I have a list of map changes that were not related to an application. So our list is going to be longer than the town's, but there's no disconnect or no subterfuge of any kind.
Wow. So is there anyone on the,
No one has
Pardon?
hands.
oh,
Rebecca's there and Leslie.
yeah, I'm there as my husband. Gary's there. iPad is there. I don't know who iPad is. Leslie? Are there any questions, please? speak now. Raise your
No,
hand.
but hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Wow.
Leslie.
Well, someone's microphone works. Hey, it's not my end doing it, is it? Hello? As
Go
a,
ahead.
as a, as a town resident, I just want to say how impressed I am with you guys. Kudos to this team.
Oh, thank you, Leslie. Okay, we've got Simon Klimper here in the schoolhouse.
I'm Simon Klemperer, and I should say that I have submitted an application to be a member of this committee, but I am not speaking as a member because I have not been approved. I am a professor at Stanford University, but I am not speaking in my capacity as a scientist at Stanford University. A couple of notes, simply that the town map currently says that it includes modifications submitted to the town prior to December 2008. So that seems to be a little bit to variance with the suggestion of the geologist that there's been updates even as recently as 5 years ago.
Well, Nan,
Um,
you,
Yeah, there was a meeting in 2014, according to the minutes of this committee, at which John presented about a dozen changes that had gone, through the standard process, Planning Commission, ASCC or otherwise. And Bob Rucky and his dad, Chet, presented their BSSA paper, which showed a change in the location of the San Andreas Fault at Alpine Road. So those changes were discussed at that meeting and are on the 2017 map, regardless of what
Yeah,
anything else says.
Note to users simply didn't get updated.
that could
to
be,
reflect
that could be.
Where did you see the 2008 reference?
In the note to users,
Note to use.
bottom left of the publishing.
That was probably left over from the 2010 version of the map. That's my guess.
Well,
It just,
thank you for noticing that.
The second comment is about the availability of information to the public. So I was easily able to download the 2017 map. I haven't yet been able to find the correct place where the map directs users to updates at hotelvalley.net. I don't know where in the website to go. I would ask whether this PDF is a geo-referenced PDF or a regular PDF, and whether the town might plan, whether the town GIS is also accessible to residents to view. If that is the ultimate authority, that might be a useful to make available to and if not, simply a geo-referenced PDF might be part of them. But if the GIS was available, and also in Woodside, it would solve Nan's problem of being able to turn on and off the area photograph layer that is currently on the public Woodside. The third comment about public availability of information is that we've had an interesting presentation on the Berrocal Fault and on the Black Mountain Fault, but these aren't currently shown on the town map. And so I suspect that members of the public following this discussion might be very confused at the end as to where these respective faults are. And I don't know what the right way to handle it is, given official. Maybe they're, I don't even know whether they exist on the quaternary fault database, which we've been talking about.
They do exist. I can answer that one. They do exist on this, the evacuation for fire after earthquake, basically, fire following earthquake. They do exist on that map. And that's the only,
Town website.
it is. I'll see if I can find it while we.
Found.
I could tell you where it is. If you find the evacuation plan, fire evacuation plan, and that would be under, I think it's planning and building department.
Buried.
And you,
So,
anyway, it's hidden deep in the menu, but it is on the website.
I'm confident you're right. I
Yeah,
think.
no, I understand.
Into the larger audience.
No, I understand. Unless you know what you're looking for, you're never going to find it. But that map we are proposing to put in a more visible place for the public.
Then the final comment, unrelated, is that I've noted the suggestion that some geophysical profiling might be useful. And if there was any site or sites of particular interest, then I think that at Stanford University, we would certainly like to be aware of where a student investigation might have the most public impact. Thank you.
Thank you. That would be the best of all worlds. I mean, if we could get students involved and get some hard data on the areas we'd like to investigate.
and remind me, are the Barracal and Black Mountain faults on the USGS fold and quaternary?
Barracal is on the USGS map up to the middle of the Priory Field.
The quaternary fold and fault
Quaternary, yeah.
is the Barracal.
Yeah,
but not-
it's considered quaternary active, but they don't have a better date on it than that, just quaternary. And the Black Mountain is not shown. But the Black Mountain is a puzzle to me. As I said, it coincides with the Barracal very closely in one place. And then they're mapped in different drainages all the way down to Cupertino. So maybe they're the same, maybe it's a folded, one is a fold of the other, who knows where the real rupture is. And then in Portola Valley, is it a splinter of the San Andreas? Is it a splinter of the Barracal? Does it, is it, I don't know. Difficult to say. Okay. Any other,
There were a few questions for staff. Do you want me to answer those?
I'm sorry?
Do you want me to answer the staff questions? There were a few I heard that I took note of.
Oh, wait, we had, wait, Mary had one more question, and that's for Darcy. When does the planning commission come into the discussion on the policy issues here?
Yes, so I think it depends on the nature of the policy questions. The planning commission does have quite a substantial role. I'm just pulling up the infamous Resolution 500, which is posted online. It's now officially Resolution 2746-2017, but I would emphasize it's got 13 pages of a lot of really good procedural items, including some that have come up, such as how does the town geologist approach map amendments that come to their attention. The planning commission has a large role, largely, I don't want to say administrative, but they review all the map amendments and approve them. They are not necessarily a policy body, but if through this process, we find that there's questions, especially related to, again, their role in administering the maps and approving the map amendments. Because I guess a follow-up question is, would any of this resolution, which again has extensive policies and procedures, would that need to be amended too? But I guess I would say there's a there's a chance, a potential the planning commission should be involved in policy issues, and there's a chance that the appropriate body to review them is the town council. But I would emphasize, neither of them has a geologist. So you are truly the experts here. And the procedural policy topics that arise, it would be again great to get your input, whether through a committee memo or other document. But I would say let's just put a pin in the scope. And again, we've had lots of things we're talking about, which again, the model for the scope is very much sort of base time and materials for cotton shires. And then all these, I'm hearing just, John, all of these kind of optional added on tasks. But there was another question. Can I answer that one too from Simon? And I should mention that Simon's appointment is on the town council meeting for October 22nd. So it's been agendized. So if that goes forward, he could be at your next meeting in November. So he had asked if, he couldn't find the map updates online. The map updates are not posted online. They're, I don't want to say paper, some of them we have digital, but they're in the town records. Then Simon asked if the town GIS is accessible for residents. Please cover your ears, but we do not have a GIS that's accessible to the residents. It is a goal of mine to build out that GIS system. We do not currently have a GIS resource available with hours to do that. We have an amazing GIS intern, Duncan Vaughn, who helped prepare the package of map amendments that was sent to Cotton Shires. And it's been discussed with him, but since he's a volunteer, it's based on his availability. But many towns have publicly accessible GIS map layers, which are amazing and state of the art and definitely help distribute this information widely. So that would be the long-term goal. I think I answered all the questions,
What?
but it was a lot, so.
I think so.
So
Simon, were
there's
all
one other
okay.
question about whether the PDFs that are the basis, they're geo-referenced.
I don't think the 2017 maps were geo-referenced, no. It would be great to have that though. And whether it was Cotton Shires or again, we would happily accept any GIS volunteers that want to dig into this project. That would be a great student project. Again, we have a GIS intern who's volunteering right now doing some mapping. And I will tell you, having worked with a lot of the different committees, I mentioned like wildfire preparedness and emergency preparedness, there is a huge need for mapping in this community that would greatly enhance the public's ability to access those maps, both in a hazard and a non-hazard property inquiry model.
Yeah. So question, Darcy, we do have a license for GIS, ArcGIS?
Correct. We do have an ArcGIS license.
How many
I-
seats?
We might have up to 5.
5. So one might, this committee, for instance, might borrow a seat if it
Correct.
needs to do
Yes.
mass. That would be very interesting.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, Simon, did we get all your questions answered? I will find the map for you. Actually, the map that shows Black Mountain and Baracal as potential geologic hazards impeding an evacuation will be on, probably under the Geologic Safety Committee section of the site. It's still buried pretty deeply in the menu. But yeah. Okay. Any other comments, public? Committee? Okay,
I have one issue that I'd like to discuss with the committee regarding the changes or possible changes to the map. There's over the years, there have been certain projects where, mostly grading projects, where a big chunk of ground, say, experienced landsliding, and it was repaired with grading methods. So you have a huge swath of ground that was a landslide, and now it's an engineered fill. And that fill has subdrains that need to be cleaned out, and some maintenance is required on these types of repairs. None of those are shown on the town map, and there's a significant amount of those in the town that have occurred over the years. And it specifically states in Resolution 500 that those repairs are not to be shown on the map because the map is labeled as undisturbed ground, movement potential of undisturbed ground. And I think that needs to be changed. And to Nan's point early in the meeting, you know, if the public comes in and looks at a map and they see, for example, 16 Santa Maria is a good example, and 42 Santa Maria. A big landslide, 1998, the property sat for years as a blight on the town. Finally, it was approved for a grading repair. So there's subdrains, there's discharge points, things that need maintenance, but also anybody that's going to buy a property, I would want to know if I'm on engineered fill or if I'm on bedrock. And that isn't at least allowed under Resolution 500 for us to show that. And I think it was recently 145 Deer Meadow, I think, was the one that came up where there's all these cleanouts, white pipes that pop up, you know, that are to be used for cleaning out the subdrains. And homeowners have no idea what those are. And if that's not shown on a map, then certainly that's information that they're not privy to before buying a piece of property. So I think that the time has come to change that if we can, and have us show the limits of that engineered fill. I don't think you need to do it with retaining walls, or sometimes we'll install deep pilings to stabilize ground, but certainly something that requires maintenance, that's something a homeowner needs to be aware of. So I think that's something that should be added, and it would be the geologic map. And we can come up with a category for the movement potential map for that specific area. So just wanted to throw that out and see what kind of reaction you guys have.
Yeah, I was listening to the planning commission meeting at which that particular property was discussed, and I'd read the reports. And I saw that you recommended perhaps putting an R next to the standard designation.
Yeah, I can't remember what wording I used, but I know I brought it up in my
Yeah.
letter.
And I thought, good for John. Yes, absolutely. I would, you know, if I have a vote on this, I would say, I would love to see those areas recognized as having the potential in the future, if they're not maintained, for sliding again.
Yeah, or at least a public awareness of what that ground is, you know, and I think that's what a geologic map is a recognition of what you're looking at on the ground surface. So.
Any other thoughts on that particular item?
I have one. Just that the best practice would be to record that on the title. That way the owners have that disclosure. And Nan, I heard you say earlier that, you know, one of the concerns you have is that there's real estate transactions and this information isn't readily available during that transactional stage. It sounds like a lot of the properties here go through a pre-purchase investigation, which is certainly the best practice. But for those who don't, the alternative is to record something like this on the deed. It's done now, for example, with stormwater facility. Hence the O&M requirements are often recorded on the deed. And for those of you who don't know, anything's recorded on the deed, it will pop if someone like a realtor or a title company does a title search. So therefore it's generally disclosed through the purchase process. But that would be the best practice. So I don't know if we have any moving forward, John, but we would definitely want to flag that to ensure there's a condition of approval and any town approvals to ensure those are recorded on the deed. I don't know if we can go backwards, but it might be possible, especially if we had a volunteer to go through them and record those.
Yeah, I would love to, I know I'm thinking of a landslide off Alamos that almost, his toe almost went into the house beneath, below. That's not even, the landslide was huge. And
So-
major, but it's gone from the map. It's
Yeah,
not
so
even-
I'll proffer this could be maybe a project for the Geologic Safety Committee, either now or as part of your next annual work plan to go through and help prepare that list of the properties. And then potentially work, go through the town files. And if you think there's, a top 10 where this should be recorded, we could talk to the town attorney about how to approach that. But certainly I would say these also can become a town nuisance, and under our town ordinance, we do have the ability to, apply our town requirements as well as state law against properties. And rather than get to the point where we have a code enforcement case and the case is opened, and then I'll be honest, those take time and administrative work. If we could proactively address these through recording these on the title, that would definitely help prevent what often is a very time-consuming code enforcement process when these do become, I'll just say, neglected. Or honestly, as John said, like the owners are just unaware. It might pass through property owners and they're just not aware.
Okay, so we could consider adding that to the work plan. just to go
Correct,
through the
yes.
records, Yeah,
Correct. That would be immensely helpful.
okay.
And Rebecca has her hand up. Rebecca has her hand.
Rebecca, where did
I'm sorry? Oh, Rebecca.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, very loud.
Okay. I actually have a process question for the town. As the Geological Safety Committee works on your scope of work for Cotton Shires. So my understanding is that the Geological Safety Committee actually has a list of specific documents that you would like to see, you would like to have access to. So I'm wondering, as you prepare your scope of work for the for the amendments to the map, should GSC also provide a list of the documents and the references they want access to? Should that be part of this map amendment scoping project, or should that just be done as a separate request? And is there available budget for what sounds like pretty modest work? So really the question's for Darcy, I guess.
That definitely sounds like a good item to examine in the scope.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly which document, there are the trenching in the field, certainly on those reports. If we don't have them already, we would like to see them. But there may be others that we're not aware of. So it's a good question from Rebecca. So Simon, microphone, please. We have Simon in the schoolhouse.
Remember again, the town of Woodside maintains the geologic and geotechnical report database, and that online you can access the PDF, runs to, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 pages, referring, of course, to a series of boxes to then paper documents. And it's unclear to me what is the ownership of these various reports, whether there are some reports that Cotton Shires is not allowed to upload, or whether in fact every document in this database could be made available to the public on request with a search of town record.
Yeah, well, I'll speak for Portola Valley. We do work in Woodside, and I think we do the same thing there, but we maintain several boxes of fault investigations that we open up to the consultants. And frequently they come to our office and rifle through our boxes of hard copy fault investigations. One of the things that we've been working on for a little bit now, we try and bring in interns in the summer, and we're working on a fault map for the the town of Portola Valley, which would show every fault that's been done in the town as far back as our files go. And with what they found, and where the document can be looked at in our office. So that's a really valuable document because we get called all the time from consultants, hey, have you trenched anywhere? Has anyone trenched around this property? And we'll say, hey, come down, you can look through our boxes. We know there's fault investigations, 3 or 4 of them surrounding that area. But if there was a map that showed all the faults in, one map, and you click on it and you can find out who did it, when it was done, and what they found, it's an extremely valuable document. And we didn't have our intern this year to develop that, so it's still a work in progress, but just to let you know, we are working on that in the town. But to answer your question, yes, there's nothing that we have in our files that we consider proprietary. It's open to anyone that wants to look at it.
Thank you, John. That actually makes me feel a lot better because we know that there are faults all through here that aren't on the official map.
Well, none of the trench locations are. And so it's extremely valuable to know where people have trenched in town. And so it's something we definitely want to do for the town. We were hoping to do it without having the town pay for it, and we were using interns to do that. So we'll see if we can continue putting that
Great.
together.
Are you doing it for Woodside also?
Not right now.
Starting with Portola Valley?
Yeah,
Okay. No, that would be extremely valuable information.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I have one question left, and that is study session that we've discussed. And I'm not sure exactly how that would come about. Maybe that just needs discussion offline. And
For
can't
n-
get it settled here.
Yeah, for now, I would suggest that Cotton Shires includes it as an optional task as well as the Planning Commission study session. And then as this project evolves, we can make that call later. Because I think it just depends on the nature of questions that arise to needing that input.
Wait, you said Planning Commission study session, so have the Planning Commission?
Possibly. Well, Councilmember Hufty asked a question about the Planning Commission's engagement on policy issues. And it just depends on what those policy issues are. We don't know them now. We've had a lively discussion here of some of them, but until those policy issues are scoped in more detail and John and the staff feel like we could successfully ask those policy questions and provide the background, I'm inclined to not include them automatically in the scope, but John would include them as an optional item, and then the town staff would authorize that optional item if needed.
Okay, so John, do you have all the information you need to come up with the cost estimate and time?
Well, no, I would like whatever document is going to be produced as far as, I do for the map modification portion of the project. If there's any optionals, I would need a description of what those are in order to weigh in on it.
Okay. Okay. So I assume that, just going back to the Black Mountain and Barracal faults, for instance, that if we are to investigate, if we're to, if we get any more information, I don't know at what point you would like to be involved in that discussion. And that would be in addition to the automatic map changes that, your, what is it, 15 or so map changes that you're already planning to make.
Right. Anything that would involve a study of the Black Mountain Fault is going to take a while. There's no way it would be ready to add to any map modification anytime soon.
All right, but if we can, if we can take Simon's suggestion that we get students involved and can get some seismic information across the alluvium where we couldn't possibly, well, trenching it might be difficult if it's the alluvium's steep enough. We could continue on our own there and just keep you apprised of what's happening.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful to have a, Stanford research project kind of spearhead that for sure.
Yeah, that would be the best of all worlds.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Are any more comments, thoughts? Thank you very much, John. Yeah. Wow. Okay. I would like to continue with the agenda and.
Do you need John to stay or can he
Pardon?
leave? Do you want John to stay for the administrative part of it? I see you have minutes, town picnic booth.
Yeah, I don't think so. The rest is
Okay.
administrative.
Thank you so much for attending, John.
Yes, thank you very, very much, John.
Really helped a
It's been
lot.
very helpful. Okay. All right, so attached, well, on pages 2 and 3 of the agenda, if you have them on the computer or you have a hard copy, are the minutes from, and I said June, it's not June, my typo, August and September to approve. I assume everyone has read the minutes and
I second.
oh, we have Gary moves, Bob seconds that we approve both sets of minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes approved. Thank you very much. Okay. Third item of new business is at the town picnic a couple of weeks ago, Bob and I decided to get a booth for our committee. And we showed up and we had a table with an awning above it and had three, we had our evacuation map with the geologic hazards and mounted on foam core. And then 3 photos from the Lawson, well, not the Lawson report, from the 3 photos of road damage in Portola Valley from 1906. And the third one was, what was the third one? Oh, what was the third one? Do you remember? Those 3. In color, I had 2 maps. Anyway, so we had displays and people came by and talked to us. My takeaway from that was that people knew nothing about what we were trying to tell them. They had no idea. They just knew that, there were some geologic issues here, but they hadn't really thought about how they might impact an evacuation. And they were interested. We had people from Woodside, especially the southern part of Woodside. And we had people from Ladera. And I think we have people from Los Trancas Woods. Might have Santa Maria, definitely Santa Maria people were interested.
So Nan, the booth, was it just focused on fault hazards or did it cover
Well, whatever they wanted to talk about, but those were our
in terms
displays.
of what you had displayed?
We just had, so we explained what the displays meant, yeah. And that there was, and we would have issues if we had to evacuate for fire after a large earthquake on the San Andreas. We didn't go into detail about triggered secondary faults or anything like that, but the map shows this. Yeah, Bob.
So just very quickly, because I know the meeting's running late, my big takeaway from what we got from the town picnic was I wanted to know, as a person who was there, what was going to be the reaction. I had no idea. Mostly what I got is that people don't know what to do with this information, but they are interested in finding out. And really, information that is provided, we sort of need to help them focus on it because they just didn't know what to do. As a great example, we showed where the San Andreas Fault is on the town field that was going through the picnic. And people didn't know what to make of that. I mean, they never thought of it. It's like, okay, that was interesting information, but what do I do with it? They didn't know. Anyway, that's my hopefully brief summary.
So,
of that.
so did you focus both on where fault traces cross Portola Valley, but also get people thinking about how to evacuate if there's a significant earthquake, or you mean you just focused on, here's a fault that you should,
It varied, but clearly people were trying to, people don't know what to do with the information is the big,
and that
question.
information was fault traces going through
Mostly.
town.
Yeah, but in some cases, we did get into discussions about, well, okay, if you're, you can't go this direction, you'll have to evacuate in the other direction. Okay. And the map does show areas of potential liquefaction and definitely where landslides could impinge on the road. We asked them whether they'd be interested in neighborhood level maps, and yes, the answer is definitely yes. They're interested in those. So I think we're safe in continuing the project with neighborhood level maps showing the geologic hazards in case of evacuation, and a short narrative, so visual and verbal.
So to follow on to something we talked about at a previous meeting, there needs to be a step between publishing the maps and translating them for people that don't read maps.
That's the purpose of this, the narrative paragraph or whatever.
Yeah, but I think you
You
need
think
more than,
it needs more?
yeah.
So what do you think the step is? If
Something written in layperson.
yeah, that's what we had we're
language.
talking about.
I brought something in that was in the Chronicle, Sunday Chronicle yesterday. It's a 20-pager on earthquakes preparing for the inevitable. There've been lots of things like this over the years, but this is just, the latest yesterday and maybe worth looking at for ideas. There was that one after Loma Prieta, Living in Earthquake Country,
Yeah.
which was very widely distributed, in the newspapers, but the newspapers aren't what they were in 1989. So that's,
Yeah,
anyway, that's worth,
yeah, thank you. Okay.
yeah.
It's a real newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, been a issue that's been, revisited over and over and over again. But I guess for us, it's to make it specific to Portola Valley.
But it is comforting, even if they don't go to read a map, if there is a big disaster that has all the information on it that they will ever want. They really want to know how to get the hell out of here or how to stay in place. And that's about it.
Mhm.
So those are the things we need to have. We need to have a map because some people are going to say, well, I don't understand how that affects us, where we are. I live right here. Oh. I think this is an important thing, but seems to me that we have overstayed our welcome here now, and we really need to consider it more and come back and have the next meeting about that. I think the important thing is to get the map out, but it's a heck of a lot more important to get the things to people that says, this is how you can stay alive if it happens. And I'm not talking just about an earthquake, but about, of course, wildfire, landslide, civil unrest, another election, all those things. But I think we've really run our game today. And I urge us to continue it on at the next meeting.
I like that idea.
Let's go to lunch, folks.
Yeah.
We can't take a vote because it's not on the agenda. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
proposing to
Okay,
adjourn.
I will circle back to this. Bob, did you have a thought?
No, my thoughts can wait until the next meeting.
Oh, okay, well, are we, oh, we're past 12. Okay, one thing I did want to do was see if we can agree really quickly on what we can do for the rest of 2025. Maybe we'll just have to do it at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, let's adjourn. I can't, no, someone else suggests.
So moved.
So we just need to vote.
We have a, we-
Move.
I think Gary moved that we, yes.
All in favor?
Yes. In favor.
Aye. Opposed? We're-
Aye.
No, he's saying aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
much.
That's a real good.